We are just getting started. We're just about to start our big second part of a presentation. Again, this is where it's all connected. Now we just learned, like, sometimes, like with Angie, we have no idea what's causing us to think or act the way that we do. Well, what happens if that's not you? What if that's your friend? What if that's your family member, your daughter, your spouse, your father? How do we care for the people that we love? So I'm going to introduce both Lance and Tamara, who are trained in this program, that they'll speak more about as we enter into not a presentation, but a beautiful, awesome discussion.
Okay. Yep. So first of all, we don't have any slideshows or PowerPoint.
You did.
You didn't. We are doing it old school, so we wanted to make this more of a conversation with you guys. But we do want to share a little bit of our stories also. So I am going to go first. And I do get a little emotional sometimes, and I have everything written down, so if it looks like I'm going off this, I am, because I need to. So first of all, thank you for everybody for coming and giving me this opportunity to tell this story. The topic of caring for somebody with a mental illness is deeply personal to me. And while every family's journey is different, I hope that sharing ours makes somebody feel a little less alone. Okay? Around 2015, our daughter Jersey, who was 10 years old at the time, was often sick, physically not feeling well. And after a lot of testing, we learned that she had celiac disease, which is an autoimmune disease where if she ingests gluten, it makes her sick. So we thought maybe that was some of the issues she was having at 10 years old, and we thought, yay, we're gonna fix all this. Well, it didn't get any better. It gradually got worse. So it was in January of 2017, so now she's 12 years old. I had sent a picture through Snapchat to one of my friends, and my friend noticed some red marks on her wrist and brought that to my attention later that evening. And as a mom, I had a feeling that there was some self-harm that was going on. And so the next day, I called the school counselor and asked her to have a conversation with Jersey, in which she did. And she called me later that afternoon, and she told me that Jersey had shared with her that she was feeling very depressed, and she had been cutting herself for about 1.5 years. So this started when she was 10 years old. The counselor advised me to call the doctor, go up in her room, remove anything that would be sharp, anything like that. So I went up to her room, and I was looking in her garbage can. I don't know why, that was just what I was doing, and I had found a pencil sharpener that she had taken apart to get the blades out of. And also in the garbage, I found some napkins or Kleenex with blood, and I found a crumpled up suicide note. And it just so happened that my husband and I both had that day off, and so he was in the basement working out, and I went down there and I showed him this note, and he didn't say too much, but we knew we had to do something. So I did call the doctor, and in a small town, I actually had our doctor's cell phone number, and he answered. And this is like part of the whole community helping you. And you might not realize it at the time, but all these things come together, to help Jersey out. Well, he answered his phone, like I said, and he said, I think that you need to take her to the behavioral health hospital in Sioux Falls and get her some help. And if you have any issues there, I don't know what they'll do. Hopefully they will admit her, but if you have a problem, let me know. I will try to help you. Okay? And so we picked her up from school, we brought her home, and we packed a bag, and we were trying to prepare for something that we didn't know anything about. We didn't know where we were going, we didn't know what we were doing, we didn't know what we were supposed to bring, we didn't know if she would be admitted, we didn't know any of that stuff. So we picked her up at school and brought her home, and we were going to talk to her about it. And I remember saying to her, I held her chin in my hand and I said to her, we can tell everybody it's your stomach. Nobody has to know. And she looked at me and said, why? And at the time, I didn't fully realize or understand the significance of that question. But later in our story, I realized that it was my own stigma talking. And the last thing we wanted for our daughter was to feel ashamed of having a mental illness, yet without realizing it, I was suggesting to her that we hide it. When we arrived at the hospital, we sat in the waiting room while Jersey was taken back for an evaluation. And as my husband and I waited, we looked around, and what struck us the most was that everybody there was normal people, just like us. They were everyday people. There were parents there, there were children there was families there, and it was a huge turning point for me because if I'm being honest, I had assumptions. I thought mental illness pretty much only happened to a certain kind of people, and what kind of people that is, I don't even know. I don't know if I would recognize what I thought. But I want you to know that it can happen to anyone at any time. Jersey was admitted, and that was incredibly difficult for us as parents, and it's not like a typical hospital stay. You are behind locked doors. There are security guards, there's codes to get into the adolescent unit back then, or she was adolescent then, and there was procedures in place there that we were not prepared for. She was 12, and we couldn't stay with her, and we couldn't sleep next to her, we couldn't help her, we had to leave. And as a parent, that felt impossible. But we knew we had to do that at the time. So my biggest concern at that time was the cuts on her thighs, which in reality, that was just a little bit of the big picture that was going on. But for me, and my coping, I was looking at that little piece of this because I didn't want to think about the big picture of what was happening. The nurses examined her and did what they need to do, and they reassured me that she was fine. And because of the location of her cuts, it wasn't unusual that I wouldn't have noticed them. But the guilt was very overwhelming. The hospital staff was wonderful. They filled their days with therapy, they had school, they had mindfulness, they had self-reflection, they had group sessions. And we knew she was where she needed to be at that time. The first time she was in the hospital, she was diagnosed with ADHD, depression, anxiety, and suicidal ideation. And that was her first stay. And over the next year and a half, she would be hospitalized 5 more times. And the truth is, our story doesn't really have an ending, which we thank God for that, because 2 months after that, she had an attempt on her life, which landed us back in Sioux Falls Hospital. Jersey, mental illness is something that she will have throughout her whole lifetime. She continues to fight this every day, and she continues to grow. And perhaps someday she will have her own story to tell, and Jersey is here, which is great. During those early hospitalizations, I found NAMI, which is the National Alliance on Mental Illness, and they offered a 12-week class in Watertown for family members caring for loved ones with mental illness. And at first they weren't sure whether I should attend because my person was a 12-year-old child. And most of the people there, their loved ones were adults. But they did allow me to come. And a close friend and a client of mine joined me, and those classes changed my life. One thing I learned is that while all of our stories may be different, none of us are alone. Some of the families in that class face situations very different from ours. Jersey was never violent. We never had involvement with the judicial system. And for some families, that is part of their journey. But despite our differences, we all have the same reason for being there. We all love somebody who's struggling. And that brings me to the second part of my message tonight, that you are not alone. Remember that waiting room I talked about, the one that was filled with all these normal people? Their parents, their siblings, their spouses, their children, and their friends of people that are struggling. There was one time we even witnessed an AA group brought one of their group members in. They were checking him in. They had no idea any of his personal information. They just knew that they were at a meeting and he needed help. And his friends brought him in. They're just real people. They're just trying to navigate something that they never expected to happen in their life. Mental illness does not discriminate. It can affect any family. And if you're caring for someone with mental illness, I want you to hear this. Their illness is not a reflection of your worth as a parent. For years, people would ask me, what happened to her? Was she bullied? Did something traumatic happen? And eventually, I learned to answer very honestly and bluntly and say, nothing happened. She has a mental illness. Just like somebody can develop diabetes, heart disease, or cancer. Somebody can develop depression, anxiety, or other mental health conditions. In our case, it was a chemical imbalance for Jersey. Another lesson that she taught me was the importance of listening. As parents, we want to fix everything. When our kids are hurt, we want answers, we want solutions. But sometimes they don't need us to fix it. They just need us to listen. I learned to ask myself, do they want advice? Do they want a solution? Or do they simply want to be heard? And most of the time, they just want to be heard and they want to be validated. And sometimes the most honest thing that we can do, and I had to learn this, is just to say, I don't know. I don't know the answer, but I will do my best to find somebody that can help you. The other thing that I learned is that no one gets through this alone. You need a team, and there were days when Jersey was in school that her anxiety was so bad that she couldn't go to school. And we would stand in my kitchen and I would get so mad and I would scream and yell and say words I can't say here. Get your flipping backpack and get your A to school, right? And she just stood there and said, I can't. Please don't make me. Please, I can't. And that is the times when I literally wanted to walk in the other room and rip my own hair out. But you can't do that. And I remember thinking, what excuse am I going to give that school nurse? I have to come up with something. Why is she missing today? You know? And I realized the school was not the enemy. The nurse was not the enemy. The teachers were not the enemy. The counselor wasn't the enemy. The principal wasn't the enemy. We were all on the same team. We all wanted the same thing. And we wanted Jersey to be safe and healthy and successful. So whether it's your school, your church, your support group, your sports team, your 4-H club, your friends, your family, or your healthcare providers, please build a team. Accept help and lean on your community. I want to touch a little bit on stigma. The reason that I'm here tonight is because I believe we have to keep having these conversations. Mental illness thrives in silence, it thrives in shame, and it thrives in stigma. We have to remind ourselves that everyone is fighting these battles that we know nothing about, and we have to choose kindness, and we have to choose understanding. And we have to be willing to have conversations that may feel extremely uncomfortable, because those conversations can truly save lives. We had to ask our 12-year-old daughter every day at breakfast if she was feeling suicidal. And who wants to do that? Who does that? But we have to do that. And like I said, those conversations have to be had. Now keep in mind, tonight this was just a very, very snippet beginning of our story. And when people say you need to take life one day at a time, let me tell you, there was times we were living one moment at a time, 1 minute at a time to get to the next thing. And like I said, this is our story, and not everybody has the same outcome, success, not success, but we know it's ups and downs. We know this is something that is forever. Jersey's doing very well right now. And I'm very happy to be part of this group. I think it is much needed. And if there's one thing I need you all to remember, is that you're not alone. No family is alone. There's so many, my story, our story is it's our child. Jersey and I talked about this morning, and a big fear is that there's kids that parents either aren't listening or they're not hearing them, and it just is kind of saddening, thinking they're just going down to their room in their basement and nobody's talking to them about some of this stuff. Sometimes people think you can't talk about it because it could make things worse. I don't believe that's true, but you're never alone. In fact, this is Lance, and one time when we were coming home from a mental health hospital, I don't even remember how the conversation started, and somebody said, "You should talk to Lance Johnson." And I thought, well, I know his daughters and his wife. They come to the beauty shop. I'll call him. I was grasping at anything. I needed something. We needed more. We needed help. We needed answers. We needed something. And I thought, well, if he's got something that's good advice, I would take it. Well, we had some conversations. I'm very thankful that Lance and I started talking about this, because he has helped me so much. Because things that Jersey could not put verbalized to me as a 12, 13-year-old, Lance could help verbalize that to me from an adult perspective. With that being said, we started teaching some NAMI classes, and that was before COVID, and unfortunately with COVID, those all got shut down. And to be completely honest with you, I don't know where NAMI is right now with their services, which is unfortunate. I did put some flyers on the tables that Jen from the community health nurse brought me, so thank you. And that's it for me. Thank you for allowing me to share that and putting up with me, and now Lance can have a turn. I know we were gonna do a choreographed dance, but we didn't have PowerPoint. But we did have time.
We're out of time, right? Well, thank you, Tamara. And Tamara and I did take some training together, and so NAMI is National Alliance of Mental Illness. And so we took some training in that and tried to help out those that may be struggling with youth that may have some mental health challenges. Sure, I wonder what could this guy talk about, this old duffer up here now, that what would he know about it? So some things I'm going to share tonight with you, I'm hoping are more so that you can recognize maybe in your children and grandchildren, maybe things that could be going on that otherwise you may not, because I've lived it firsthand. So I'll give you some of my background and maybe what I went through, right? So, and all in hopes that it can help you, right? So, well, I'm a Webster Bearcat, start off with, pretty proud of that. So I grew up on a small farm up in Webster. At that time it was a decent sized farm, but today's world would be a small farm, right? So we had beef cattle and chickens and hogs and small grain, all those good things. So great life. But I was about 10 years old, and I'll just say this: my kids have not heard a lot of this because, right, I'm supposed to be the tough guy, right? And that's the stigma behind mental illness, right? That's what you feel like you can't share, because you're supposed to be the tough guy, fix things, right? So I think I was about 10 years old, and now you'd call it OCD, right? Obsessive compulsive disorder, but I would do, some of you are gonna think this is weird, but this is mental illness stuff, right? I can't explain it sometimes. It sounds, some of the stuff seems weird, right? But I do things like, I gotta shut the door to the barn 20 times tonight, or I'll die tonight. I've gotta make 50 baskets in a row tonight, or I'll die tonight, And I wonder what my parents were thinking as I looked out that window. What are you doing, But gotta remember, this was a long time ago, and just thinking their kid is nuts, probably, right? But I didn't know what it was. I hated it, right? I absolutely hated it. Didn't know. Always worried about dying, right? And then my uncle passed away from a brain tumor. Guess what? I must have a brain tumor. And why those things crop up, I don't know. I really don't. I wish I could tell you. I don't. Can I say I got rid of them? Nope. Still with me today. That's the problem with mental illness. Tamara described it well. I probably don't take too many steps out of the house without medication next to me at all times, for fear, right? For that fear. I might jump around here a little bit, but my first panic attack I experienced in church. I was an acolyte in church. Didn't know what was happening to me, but ran out of church. Mom chasing me, got me out to the hospital. What's wrong with this kid, And I was pale, I was white, I was sweaty, I was, what's going on? That was my first panic attack. If you know anything about panic attacks, or if you've ever had one, once you have one, that's just the start. That's just the start. So guess what? I couldn't go to the front of church anymore. Couldn't do it. Started freaking out. I do crazy things, so reactionary, grab my head, just couldn't sit still. And of course, parents at then get back up there, get back up there and do that. You're an acolyte, get back up there and do that. So it was really a struggle. And I think at that time, nobody, my parents certainly didn't recognize it, not their fault. I didn't recognize it, I didn't know what it was. All I know was it was really scary. So I could write a book of excuses. If you ever need a book of excuses, I've got one. I know how to get out of stuff really well. Anything that may trigger my panic, I know how to get out of it. Anything that I'm not sure of, I know how to get out of it. So I don't have to face that again. If you've never experienced one, think about maybe the scariest thing that's ever happened in your life. That's what it's like. And I don't know why. I wish I could tell you why. I don't know. I don't know why. So my high school years had a lot of successes and some failures. I got the old fun high school things right, and wrestling was a big part of my life and success and growing up, and had a lot of hopes and dreams about it, but this stuff took it away from me, right? Crazy things like I'd be out on the mat wondering if this is real or am I dreaming? Why would you think that, right? So all of a sudden I'm kind of checked out of the match, and it's like, what happened to you? Come to state tournament or whatever. And it's like, what are you going to tell people? Panic attack, So, you know, when you realize it's starting to change your daily life, you need to do something about it. But at that time, I didn't know what that was or where to go or how to do that. So I never really did. I just felt like I should be able to handle it on my own and overcome it. I thought maybe I'd overcame. I went to basic training, advanced training for the military, and came out of that feeling pretty strong and pretty confident that this is over. And it wasn't. It just took a couple sparks again, and I was right back into the same thing again. Fear. And anxiety is kind of one of those things with panic attacks. You overcome one, the next one's waiting for you. It's just a matter of what it is. All of a sudden I had fear of wide open spaces, you know, so playing baseball, man, if you weren't hitting it out to me in the outfield, I was going nuts. Underneath, my mind is just spinning. I didn't like it. Gotta keep me in the action, gotta keep me going, or my mind's just going wild on me. So when I think of wide open spaces, and most of you probably don't, one of the issues, or not issues, it could be a good thing, right? People that have panic attacks and anxiety are really deep thinkers. Now, I'm not part of this group probably, but they're supposedly smart. But you tend to think way too deep. So when you're out on an interstate and driving along and then enjoying the light up, I'm thinking about how the earth is staying afloat. Right? Kind of freaks me out. Right? So I started having a panic attack. Because I'm freaked out by that, right? It's like, how am I doing this and still staying afloat? When I get in an airplane, I tell you, I'm checking the rivets where you guys probably aren't. I'm looking at when it was built. You know, a lot of you climb on, and it's no problem. I don't like vacations. I grew up working, I like working. I don't like vacations, I'll be honest. Vacations may expose me to something I don't like. Is it a high mountain? Is it an airplane? Is it standing next to a ledge? I don't like vacations. Let me work. I'd just rather work. Fortunately, my lovely wife can put up with that, but I have a real hard time with that. And that sucks. It's a real challenge for me. And I explain this to Tamara sometimes with a panic attack. If I hit a panic attack at mile marker 100 on the interstate, I can tell you about mile 50, I'm gearing up. My body starts gearing up for it. Don't want it to, but I see 51 coming, I see 52 coming, I see 53 coming, I see 54 coming, and it's like, oh. And it's an intense fear, really is. Dina's seen me go through them, and she knows I just gotta bear down or pull off or whatever I need to do. So, but it's such an intense fear you can't control it, and it's scary, really scary. And like I said, some of the stuff is just it's crazy that pop into your head. I will tell you this, I missed out, but I got to meet folks like this, right? But I missed out on so many opportunities in my lifetime, right, because of it. I mean, we talked about wrestling a little bit. I know it cost me a state championship. Could have been on the SDSU dairy judging team, you know what that's all about, TJ, but I knew there was travel involved, so guess what? I did well up to the point that started selecting the team, and I intentionally started doing poorly, so I wouldn't have to be on the team. Numerous trips that I've checked out of because of it, just for fear of the unknown, right? If I don't exactly know what's on the other side, I'm not gonna go with you. I need to know exactly what that looks like. And I'll study it, and I'll look at it. and dig as deep as I can before I do anything. So, unfortunately, anxiety and panic attacks are hereditary. They come in different forms, right? So my sister is probably worse than I am right now. Fortunately, I still navigate pretty well. She just really struggling. She was had her master's in education, taught for a number of years. So, but struggled with it. My brother was an alcoholic. He's about 15 years sober, 20 years sober now, I guess, something like that. That's one of mental illness, right? And just, to give you an idea too, that you go on a trip, and I may say, well, I'd love to go on that trip with you, but I can't. That anxiety and panic attack starts leading into depression, right? So that's the next stage, because you get to do that, I can't. Starts getting into jealousy, gets into frustration, and it's a real challenge. So I think, one form of mental illness just can lead into the other, and you can kind of step into the next phase, so it never really just goes away. Talked a little bit about medications. I did the blood test just so we hopefully could identify what may work for me a lot faster. Some of you may know is with medications, I don't want to take them, so I try to wean off, and then it's like I shouldn't have did that probably, and then I gotta go back on it a little bit, and always try to avoid it, right? But as you go through life with your kids, grandkids, adults, whatever it is, please look for the signs and get them help. Our oldest struggled with it. I identified it right away because I could see it. I knew what she was going through and was able to get her help, and she's doing a lot better today. But wasn't so easy back in the day, and it wasn't so easy, and being the dad of the household, right, is a challenge. And I've really turned a lot of prayer lately. Our men's group, those are things I lean on, and it's good. I can manage it, but if you came up to me and said, "Hey, guess what? Let's let me run out to Colorado tomorrow," I'll have an excuse for you sometime. Maybe folding laundry, I don't know. I'm gonna have something to get me out of it. I know, washing socks or something, but I'll get my way out of it. But, if any of you have any questions, this has been, so I'm 64, 54 years, never really talked about it. Tamara a little bit, knew some of my story because of some things she had been through, and a lot of that it's a stigma. You don't want to talk about it. So, what I miss?
One thing that I did
yeah,
learn.
Yeah.
What's that?
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. He gave me permission earlier to jump in, but one thing that he had said to me a long time ago that really is what I just loved hearing him talk is because he said to me, or he said to our group, "I'm not afraid of heights. I'm afraid I'm going to jump off the ledge."
Yeah, not that I would, but you're afraid of your subconscious, right?
Of yourself.
My conscious mind knows I would never, but.
And I think with Jersey's being admitted to the hospital, they ask them that stuff. If they have a plan. Or, people have suicidal thoughts all the time, but it's if you have a plan. Because the thoughts are always there. They're always in your head.
Yeah, somebody told me one time, when that computer's spinning on, that's about what it's like. Your mind just never shuts down. Never stops thinking about what if. It's hard to turn the switch off.
So if anybody has questions.
So if it attacks you as much as it constantly there, because we all have that squirrel going, no matter what, when you're trying to focus on something, 10 other things come at it, and you get that. How have you controlled it enough to be as successful as you've been in your work life and your family life? I mean, you've gotta, is it just the meds that helps you settle at that, or?
It is, Todd, and I can say that area is my comfort zone. You know, work and family is my comfort zone. And I
So
really
you
try
stay focused.
Yep, that, I don't feel anything if I'm doing stuff at home or I'm working. That's what I know. Now, if you say, you know, you need to make a trip to New Zealand for work, I'd probably say,
How about the big stone?
I can do that.
'Cause I know you're thinking about retiring, and that's gonna really drive you over the wall, so I got something.
Yeah. You know, it's just what
We're not gonna let there be any idle hands.
you know, my mind is, it focuses on the wrong things, right? And, that's part of the thing that's really hard to control. You get so deep into things that I don't wanna think about, but I do. And I just wanna push them off, but it's tough to do. It's really tough to do, but yeah, you'll see me, Dina knows this well, but it may take us longer to get someplace, cause I'm probably gonna be on 2-lane highway.
And I think for us too, it's, when you go somewhere, we drive 2 different vehicles, we sit by an exit. If you go to the theater, in case she has to leave. So then we just have 2 vehicles and somebody has to leave. And we just know that going into it. We go to a family function, you need space, we have a space. You go down to this room, whatever. What Jersey would tell me is her mental battery is dead because she has to use everything she has sometimes just to walk through the door.
Yep.
And that was school.
Yep.
And that's something that I don't understand. I mean, she's telling me this, you're telling me this, but it's hard to understand how just walking through the door, you're done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a challenge for sure. Yeah, it's so true, you know, I mean, you just face those things, and I wish I knew why, of course. But to be honest, if I was just in this environment all the time, or at work, or near home, probably wouldn't be on any medication. But it's for those times when I have to travel, or have to go someplace, or have to be exposed to those things that I don't like. And I'm on medication. One of the medications I kinda gotta stay on all the time, so that it enhances the other ones, so.
And one other thing I was gonna say, only because our last couple times we talked about grief. And grief, we learned in our NAMI class too, that it's not always a death, it's just a change, it's an unexpected change, a bad unexpected change in your life. And that when your 10-year-old is not the same when she's 10 and a half as you feel like she was before, you almost have to grieve that person. That this is who you are. This is who we are moving forward. And sometimes when we meet with parents, or when we did, that was really hard for a lot of them. Like they just want their little kid, their little 4-year-old daughter back, or they want they have a picture of their daughter and they just know that that's in there. And it's like, it's different, right? And Jersey also taught me that they're grieving too, right? You had to grieve that too. It wasn't just from our perspective, it was also you as the,
cause I know that I'm gonna have to deal with this, like, when you're that young, finding that out,
it's a lot too.
Yeah, it sinks. But
So as a parent, want to try to focus on raising your child and making sure like they can't just get out of something because they don't want to. But at the same time, want to be looking for things like this. Like, how can you tell the difference whether they can't because they physically, like they mentally can't, or it's just because they don't want to?
Yeah, and that
You know?
is really hard. I think what we learned is every person has mental health, but you know, we all have a little anxiety, we all have a little of this, but it's when it's affecting your daily life, 100%. Not just because something comes up, or I guess we had to learn that. And people have, I think, like situational depression or anxiety when they're going through something. And like I said, for us, we know this is just mental illness, and it's what and it's lifelong.
Sounds like it's just something to look for, to make sure it's in the back of your head.
Right?
And you have to learn to trust that your kid is telling you the truth instead of just lying to you.
That is a big thing. You can explain that more.
Which, it sounds difficult, like if your kid is always trying to skip school, and you hear about kids on TV skipping school a lot, it's hard to trust that your kid is trying to skip school just because of mental health reasons. But, you know, if you go to the doctor and your doctor says that they have those issues, you have to trust that your kid is telling you the truth, type of thing.
I think sometimes, TJ, you know, it can be common things that you wouldn't think would be a problem, right? But, you know, if your child starts avoiding it or turning away from it or fearing it.
And for us, she was never violent, and you weren't either. You never fought or screamed or yelled and she's just like, please, no, I can't do this. I'm the one that turned violent sometimes, like, yes, it is extremely frustrating to care for somebody going through that, which sounds terrible to say, but it is, it's hard.
It's hard because it's so hard to comprehend, it's so hard to understand. And it's a chemical, you know, typically some form of chemical imbalance, you know, that creates some of those things. And, yeah, don't love just to be able to shut it and say, done with it. And, you know, and back in my era too, it was just step up and get over it, you know. Well, yeah, I don't know how to do that. I want to, but I don't know how to do that.
I should add, I have a brother who died by suicide in 2005. Jersey was one, and he was 37, and we had no idea that he had any type of mental health issues, but he was a 37-year-old veteran. They didn't talk about this at all, and I think for me that was always in my mind, and there is hereditary to the mental illness and all this stuff, and it made it really hard, because I always would think about that too. But as parents, we're just doing the best we can. I mean, we just are doing the best that we can, and that's it. You need your people. You need people that maybe have gone through it. We're not professionals, nor claim to be, but if we can talk about it, it helps.
And if you can take away anything from it, then it can be of any help. Like I said, no professional opinion. Still plays with me in my head all the time, so, but sometimes it's okay just to talk about it too, because that's a help in itself.
What other questions do you guys have?
Any other questions? And I also need to say, you need to have self-care, I learned. Like, they use the analogy of when you're flying in the airplane and the oxygen masks come down, you need to put yours on so you can help the person next to you. So self-care is very important as a caregiver, to take care of yourself too.
Bye.